On page 91, make sure you have this heading down. It should match page 90. And the directions are simply going to be find the roots using the quadratic formula. And if you haven't picked up on it already, I abbreviate the quadratic formula with QF. Now I am not going to write out the formula every time to save some space, so I do want you to put it at the top of your page here. So negative b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. This is one of your formulas that you do have to memorize. And we're going to do 3 problems on this page. So make sure you space accordingly. If you run out of space, then you will need a separate sheet of paper or a Post-it to add in here. So number 1, 2x squared minus 4x plus 6 equals 0. So again, we're following the same directions that are on page 88. Your first direction is to make sure the equation is set equal to 0. This one is, so we can move on. Your second step is to plug your a, your b, and your c into the quadratic formula. So I find it easier to state my a, my b, and my c value first. A is the number in front of x squared, so in this case is 2. B is the number in front of x, which is negative 4. And c is the number at the end, which is 6. So again, I'm not going to write the quadratic formula. I'm just going to automatically plug in our values as I write it on the next step. But you need to make sure that you memorize that equation. So x equals negative, instead of the b, negative 4, plus minus the square root of b squared, so negative 4 squared, minus 4 times a, which in this case is 2, times c, which in this case is 6, all over 2 times a, which is 2. On the outside, this negative 4 just becomes a positive 4, plus minus. We have to simplify what's underneath the radical. I'll come back to that. And in the denominator, 2 times 2 is 4. So again, you have to get good at doing this without a calculator because that is usually how you will have to do it. So in the margin to the left or in the margin to the right, you're going to want to work out this arithmetic. So negative 4 squared is really negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. And then we're doing 4 times 2 times 6. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 6 is 48. And then you're going to subtract them. Why subtract? Because there's subtraction in the equation. 16 minus 48, if it's 16 degrees outside and it drops 48 degrees, it's going to be a negative temperature. And then you just subtract them like normal. 48 minus 16, there's 2, 32. So underneath the radical, that simplifies to be negative 32. Now you have to break down the radical. So again, off to the side somewhere, we're going to have to tree 32. So negative 32, the negative and I will come out front automatically. 32 is 2 and 16. 16 is 4 and 4. You're looking to circle in pairs. So I'm going to stop here and circle that pair of 4s. So a 4 is going to come out front along with the I. So going to the right, we're going to have 4 plus minus the 4 that we pulled out in our pairs, the I that we pulled out also, square roots of, there's a 2 left over, all over 4. That's the hard part. Now you're reducing. So is there anything that goes into 4, 4, and 4? They're all divisible by 4. So the first 4 divided by 4 is 1, plus minus. 4 divided by 4 is 1, but we don't put that in front of the I. Square roots of 2, all over 4 divided by 4 is 1. We don't put that in the denominator. And don't forget that this is what x equals. So make sure you have that down in its entirety for number 1 on page 91. Also on page 91, here's number 2, 3x squared minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. Following the quadratic formula, your very first step is to get the equation equal to 0, which it is, and then you're going to plug in your values. So take a second and figure out what A is, what B is, and what C is all by yourself. A, number in front of x squared, so in this it is 3. B is the number in front of x, in this case negative 2. And C is the number at the end, which is 3. Plugging into the quadratic formula, x equals negative b, so negative 2 plus minus the square root of b squared, so negative 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, and c, which is 3, all over 2 times a, which is 3. So x equals negative 2 becomes a positive 2 plus minus the square root. I'm going to come back and fill in the radicand in a moment. 2 times 3 is 6. So off to the side, we have to simplify this radicand. So negative 2 squared means we're doing negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. 4 times 3 is 4 times 3, which is 12, times 3, which is 36. We're going to subtract them because there's subtraction in the formula. 4 minus 36, if it's 4 degrees outside and drops 36 degrees, the temperature will be negative, and then you just subtract them like normal, 32. So underneath the radical, we get negative 32. This radicand is the same as the radicand for number 1, and you already have the tree for that with number 1. So we already know that that reduces, that simplifies to be 4i square root 2. So we don't have to show the work for the tree here. So this becomes 2 plus minus 4i square root 2 all over 6. And you are checking to see if the numbers can be reduced. 2, 4, and 6, they are all divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus minus 4 divided by 2 is 2i, square roots of 2, all over 6 divided by 2, which is 3. And don't forget that is an x value. If you prefer to rewrite it with the x on the left, that's fine. So make sure you have all of that work down for number 2. Lastly, number 3 on this page, and it will be the last one of our examples, x squared minus 4x plus 5 equals 0. Quadratic formula, your first step is to get the equation set equal to 0, which it is. A is the number in front of x squared. B is the number in front of x. C is the last number. So A is 1, B is negative 4, and C is 5. Then you're going to plug into the quadratic formula. So take a minute and plug these values into the quadratic formula all by yourself. And it should look something like this. X equals -4 plus minus the square root of -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 all over 2 times 1. Now, if you really want to challenge yourself, you can pause the video and try solving it all by yourself and then check the answer in the end. Or you can just follow along. So -4 on the outside becomes a +4, plus minus the square root. I'm going to work that to the side in a second. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. So we have to take this expression and work it out. So we're going to do -4 squared. So at this point, see if you can simplify that expression that goes underneath the radical all by yourself. So -4 squared gives you 16. 4 times 1 times 5 is 20. And you're subtracting because there's subtraction in the equation. If it's 16 degrees outside and it drops 20 degrees, it's going to be a negative temperature. And then you just subtract them like normal. 4. Your next step is to reduce the radical. So we have to tree -4. It's a negative number, so an I is going to come out front. 4 is 2 and 2. 4 is a perfect square, so you could have automatically just pulled out 2i and not done the tree. So this simplifies to be 4 plus minus 2i. There's nothing left over when you tree 4, so there's nothing left underneath the radical. That will happen if you have a perfect square underneath the radical. And then 2 is going to be your denominator. Your very last step is to check and see if these numbers can be simplified, and they can. They are all divisible by 2. Four divided by 2 is 2, plus minus. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Because there's an I there, we don't put the 1. So you just put the I, and then your denominator, 2 divided by 2 is 1. You don't put that. You do not put 1 as a denominator. You just leave it as 2 plus minus I. And don't forget that is an x value. That would be an imaginary root. So make sure you have all of this down for number 3. And that finishes this EQ and the quadratic formula for now.